Dick, I'll tell you, it indicated something. It indicated that no matter how perjurious this guy's statements were, or how illegal his actions were, that taking it to the judge, he was confident would solve everything. And kind of like if he had the judge in his pocket, Dick. So, enter in Jorge Labarga, now on the Supreme Court of Florida. Not at the time, he was at the West Palm Beach Civil Court. And Labarga, who is the first guy to hear our case in this billing action, he mysteriously, right when we replaced the other counsel, replaces the prior judge in the billing lawsuit. And, right then we thought justice was going to prevail, that, we had him in this billing lawsuit, they were frauding a bill, they were caught stealing patents, we filed a counter complaint, but again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, but anyways, we never could have been so wrong, Dick, that we were going to get justice in the courts than when we walked into Labarga's court. And he's now the judge that I shamefully blamed for destroying our system of democracy by usurping the vote of the people. And Dick, Labarga's that judge, the judge in the Bush versus Gore election recount in West Palm Beach, Florida, who failed to demand the recount of the people's votes in our presidential election, which intentionally elevated the election of the United States to the Florida Supreme Court for a decision. And then I think it was a little hot for them. And so the court in Bush, Jeb Bush, pushed it up to the Supreme Court of the United States to decide. And that's where the Supreme Court jesters, as I often refer to them, they're in a hysterical usurpation of our rights, decided 5-4 that George Bush, the worst president ever in the history of the United States, now a possible war criminal, and one day he'll be tried for his war crimes, obviously, where they usurped the people's vote, Dick, and handed it to George Bush. And I truly believe that had a big part from Mr. Michael Grebe, again, who's been rigging the courts and the government since he basically pulled a coup to block these complaints that I had filed at the DOJ, all these federal agencies, etc. But again, a little bit ahead of my story there, Dick. So, but anyways, with that flawed, with that unconstitutional, illegal decision by the Supreme Court, that's the day we ended democracy, Dick, as we know it. And from that day forward, you could almost pinpoint it. The country has gone to hell in a bucket. And later, if we get the time, Dick, I'll point to this moment in history as the beginning of a coup d'etat on the U.S. government, spearheaded by Grebe, who, not so coincidentally, was the biggest money bag behind Bush's illegal rise to presidency. And Proskauer was also one of those pushing the agenda, the coup, on the Democratic Party. So Proskauer was a Democratic law firm. Foley was a Republican. Both of them had, their law firms with a lot of lawyers deeply into politics already. And the coup was on to stave off prosecution and derail justice against them. Anyways, Dick, once the fox was in that White House, and that's right, once the fox was in the White House, well, it's turned into a bloodbath for the country since, as they basically desecrated not only the patent office in the country and the parts they needed to block me, but once they were in, they desecrated the country morally, as in torture, Dick. And note here that you and Baby and Ashcroft, they're all lawyers. And lawyers are the politicians at the helm of all of these crimes, even including torture. And Now, actually, Dick, they've taken those crimes and they've bankrupted the country financially as in a controlled demolition of our economy. And that benefited a few, and you can see that their net worth went screaming up proportional to the middle class being sucked dry. And it was all through, these fakakta schemes, derivatives, whatever, all created by lawyers. Again, not lawyers, Dick, but criminals disguised as lawyers. Criminals who bought their law degrees out of Ivy League schools. But again, I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, Dick, they're able to penetrate roles in the courts, in the regulators, in the political sphere, because a legal degree basically built on trust buys you into pretty much any position of trust in our government. And what have they done with this demolition of our economy? They sabotage the regulatory agencies. They sabotage the prosecutorial offices. The Department of Justice is a joke, Dick. It hasn't. It can't even prosecute Eliot Spitzer for hookers, and he prosecuted people for hookers. I mean, they become the Injustice Department, and Alberto Gonzalez showed us how they were politicizing the Justice Department. Dick, just even saying the words politicizing the Justice Department means the end of the Justice Department. So were they politicizing the Justice Department and getting rid of U.S. attorneys who had information about Iviewit too? Were those some of the 9 guys? All of this. And then there's no investigations, and it's because they're obviously not going to investigate themselves. The court guys who are in the court aren't going to give justice to litigants with complaints because they'd be doing themselves in because they're part of the scam. They're part of the coup. And so, our country's in grave danger at the moment, not from Osama bin Laden, some guy on a camel in a desert with a pair of sandals, but from domestic terrorists, Dick, the kind that dress in suits and look like politicians. But again, we've got now the classic fox guarding the White House, the courthouse, the prosecutor's house, the regulator's house, and basically, Dick, just about every house but the hen house. So note, Dick, that the central theme to every single one of these crimes, to what's going on in our country, is that they're orchestrated by dirty, rotten lawyers and law firms. And some are dressed, again, as regulators. Some are dressed as judges. Some are dressed as politicians. Some as prosecutors. And, well, Dick, they say a law license is a license to steal. And currently, this is a real problem, not just a saying. Especially as you've probably recently noticed, despite their even being caught in crimes, including war crimes and torture crimes, and wars of aggression that were, brought on illegally falsified data, there's no punishment. As the Justice Department, as I said, since Gonzalez-Ashcroft, was the first thing the coup seized. And, obviously, that's a smart move when you're overthrowing the government, is to make sure that the people who are prosecuting people who overthrow the government are your people so they don't prosecute you. And by the way, this creates huge problems for the country, Dick, because as you can see, sooner or later, whether Holder is holding off the war crimes of Bush and Cheney or not, if he does hold them off, that's a war crime as well. So these crimes they are committing are going to be triable at some point, and they're very serious. They're treason, sedition, they're war crimes, they're torture crimes. But again, wait, I'm way, way, way ahead, Dick. We'll get to the overthrow of the government a little bit later.
Eliot, that sounds like a good place for us to take a break. We'll be right back after this word.